Hello and welcome to the Complete Health Podcast, the podcast that brings you a complete view of healthcare, exercise as medicine, and much more.
We're your hosts, Helen O'Leary and Reece Noble, both physiotherapists at Complete Physio and Pilates in London.
Welcome to episode 12, the second and final part of our chat with physiotherapist Dan Boyd. In our first episode with Dan, we looked at what a bike fit is and what they can actually do to help you.
In this episode, we are going to go deep into the world of triathletes, common injuries, and how you can get more from your training. Dan himself is an accomplished triathlete, so his insights on this topic were very valuable and extremely thorough.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for what is episode 12 of the Complete Health Podcast. I am your host, Reece Noble. I'm one of the physiotherapists here at Complete Physio. I was going to say Complete Health then. At Complete Physio, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Helen O'Leary.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening.
Helen is the Pilates queen, as we like to call her around here. She heads
I've got a new title, I've got my crown on.
Lovely, next birthday, covered off. And she is the clinical director of Complete Pilates. For the second time, for part 2, we have another one of our wonderful physiotherapists, Dan Boyd. Thanks for joining us again, Dan.
It's good to be back.
Excellent. Now, Dan's here, as I say, part 2 of that chat with Dan, where we're going to dive into all things triathlon, and I'll put it straight on the table now. I'm really looking forward to this.
He's got like the big, for any of you not watching this, he's literally got like the biggest grin on his face. There's just so many laughter lines going on right now.
I'm sure it'll get talked about on many of our podcasts coming up, but I have, having never done a triathlon before, I've signed up for a half Ironman next year. So I've been picking Dan's brains about triathlon because, as we'll come into in a second, he's done quite a few. And so I'm approaching this as one, a physio, of course. I'm looking forward to learning plenty of clinical things, but also as an amateur triathlete looking to improve myself. So thank you very much, Dan, for joining us on that note. So I've mentioned a little bit there, Dan. We went through your credentials as a physio in the last podcast, but in regards to triathlon, I know you've done quite a few. Where did it start? How's it gone?
How many have you done?
So how many, I don't know exactly how many Olympics I've done, but quite a lot.
How many what?
Olympic triathlons. So Olympic is it's a 1.2k swim, 40k bike, and a 10k run.
Yeah.
I've done a few of those. I think probably more than 20, more than 25. I don't know.
When you've lost count, you know you've done quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then I've done a few half irons, so I've probably done maybe 10, 11 half irons. The whole castle series.
What distances there?
So that's a 2.1 k swim. 1.9k swim.
We've got the expert over here, Reece, okay?
And then it's what is that?
90k bike.
90k, is it?
Yeah.
90k, and then it's a half marathon. And then
1k. Yep.
So you're well researched on this one, having signed up.
I've had so many people ask me in the last month or so. I've recited those lines.
It's literally sharpied onto your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then I've done 6 proper Ironmans, done a number of challenge events, and a number of ultra Ironmans.
Oh my gosh. How many is a number of ultras?
So I've done 6 proper irons, and then the ultras have done 2, which is the likes of Keltman and Norseman and things like that, which is...
Is Norseman the one in Norway where you start and finish at an endpoint and end up running up a mountain?
Yeah, same as Keltman. So Keltman, you finish up
Sounds like fun.
a place called Benai, which is... So they're just a bit longer, and then you run up a mountain at the end.
Just a mere marathon directly uphill?
Only half of it's like over Munros in Scotland or Norway.
Turning down even harder.
And then the last, so you then get like graded as to get blue t-shirt, black t-shirts, and all that sort of stuff. But Keltman, for example, the coloured ones are always better. You want the blue or the black or the red if you're doing Swiss man. I got the blues and blacks.
Ooh.
So I did it ages ago, Keltman back in 2015. Now, so 5 years ago. Where there wasn't that many people that have done it. I'm not even sure how many people have done it now, but when I did it, there was about 260 people in the world that had done it.
Wow.
Because you have to get to the bottom of the mountain in time before you run up there. Anyway.
So there's sort of checkpoints along the way, is it?
And if you don't, and that's just because you don't have enough time in the day or something?
It's to keep it exclusive, I think, from the race organisers' point of view. They call it an X-Tri event, so it's like an extreme triathlon event, and they try and keep it sort of, I guess, exclusive, but I guess to have some sort of
So you could do the swim, you could do the cycle, and then get told you're not allowed to do the run.
Well, if you don't go up the mountain, you run around it and finish, and then you get a white t-shirt instead of a blue one.
I see.
I think I'd rather run around the bottom.
Most people would, I think. So to synthesise that, Dan.
He's done a lot.
Dan knows about triathlon.
Done a few. Well, clearly I don't. Like, we've got all the distances.
But you were too worried about the long, the ultra ones.
He was getting excited about his coloured t-shirts.
Exactly. And having worked with Dan now for a couple of years, I know he's super knowledgeable with all things physio as well. So we are going to, very lucky for us, be able to amalgamate those today with our chat. So should be a good one. Leading into that, what do you see? What injuries do you see in triathletes?
Triathletes is commonly overuse injuries, so you do get your hamstring tendons, you get quads tendon, a lot of ITB friction because of the amount of cycling and running. That seems to be ITB friction or sort of bursitis of the lateral knee. You get a lot of that because of the amount of repetitive knee flexion you do. As you'll know, I'm a little bit obsessed with tight hip flexors, and you do see a lot of that as well because you're spending a lot of time in a cycling position, running as well. It's quite indicative of people getting tight hip flexors, tight everything really with running.
So to those listening, hip flexors, the muscles at the front of your knee, of your hips, your knees, your hips, get shortened with cycling, running, and sitting. So I think we see a lot of office people that end up with those.
And it's particularly in cyclists because it's not only that hip flexion, i.e. knee to nose, it's also the fact that your body is going forward. So your hip flexors are not just your quads. So it's your body coming forward, and then that's kind of sustaining that position too.
Yeah.
But don't sit up straight if you're a cyclist, as I just learned.
It's a trade-off. And then obviously you do get a lot of sort of shoulder pains for swimmers and triathletes. I think that's probably the most common one in swimming is rotator cuff. So your classic cuff or bursitis is another common pathology of the shoulder for swimmers. They're the bits that tend to be a bit unhappy.
And do you tend to find that whatever your weaker event is the place that they get the injuries first?
Weirdly, no. So anecdotally, no. It's the event you do like, you tend to do a lot more of it. So if you're a really keen cyclist and you love cycling, you tend to do love cycling, you get a cycling-related injury.
Yeah.
If you hate swimming, you tend not to do it as much. So that is a rule across the board, I think, for all triathletes. I think top to bottom, I think even the Brownlee brothers would probably agree with that in terms of if you're not that keen a swimmer, then you just tend to sort of put it towards the back of your training schedule or sometimes mail it in on a training session. That's just human nature, even if you've got a coach shouting at you. So yeah, it's actually weirdly enough, it's the one that people tend to do more of, I'd say.
Okay.
Maybe, I've never actually sat down and looked at it, but...
When I was sharing my experience of my triathlon days, I did a mini triathlon with Virgin Active in the gym, and I ended up having to swim breaststroke because I'm not a very good swimmer, and I did not do it.
So across our last few podcasts, we've established you're not a very good runner. You're not a very good cyclist.
But I commute.
You're not a very good swimmer.
I try and sink most of the time, but I do like to exercise. See, variety is key. I do a little bit of everything. I don't have any injuries, and I do, it's a typical physio, jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Yeah, for a lot of us. I can't disagree.
You put Reece and I on a Pilates report and we're 40 bits within minutes, I'm pretty sure. So
40 bits, man, I'd fold it hard. Those springs, whew, they get me. So you've obviously, have you had any injuries yourself?
Actually, touch wood, I've been reasonably lucky. So I've had a rotator cuff going in the past. That was swimming when I first started. That's probably a big tip for anyone that starts running Ironman distance for you if you start doing, if you haven't swum much before and you start swimming miles at a time, be careful of your shoulders, do some rotator cuff work, do some mobility work for your thoracic spine and bits and bobs.
Before, after, different days?
I would probably just add it into a conditioning session separate from everything else. So I'd just do it as a standalone session and use that instead of a run session or cycling session, which is sacrilege to most triathletes, but you can't train if you're injured.
I want to delve into that a little bit more. A lot more.
It's something that I think if you're taking on triathlon for the first time, whether that's a sprint, Olympic distance, the distances and I think the combination of them all on one day will definitely involve some sort of preparation that isn't just swim, cycle, run. Should be some other stuff going on there to make sure you don't wind up coming to see us.
Okay, so then let's look at that. So swim, cycle, run all in one day, and there should be other stuff. How often should there be other stuff? So bear in mind now we're kind of triathlon people. You're not a me. You're going to be doing a little bit more than what I tend to do. So you're a bit more serious about your training. What would be the ideal gold standard training week?
So let's take Reece, for example. If you're doing that sort of long distance, most of your runs should be nice and steady. You wouldn't be looking to do pace runs or interval sessions, basically fast, high intensity runs, any more than once a week. I think that's a common mistake that people use.
Okay.
You want time on feet with that sort of distance, and particularly
my
when
coach has been doing a lot of heart rate. Keep it at, go on run for
come
75
up
minutes.
And then just keep it at that level as you just keep
Go
going.
for 75 minutes, keep it at or just below 140.
Okay.
and it's hard. It's actually hard to make yourself go slow.
Yeah.
It is.
So
I mean, I don't tend to struggle with it.
in that triathlete. But yeah, I think definitely time on feet and the interval, particularly with the whole hip movement and stuff, has been probably overutilised, particularly in triathlon, particularly long distance triathlon, and it's probably accountable for more injuries than it's probably helped people, I would say. So yeah, time on feet and actual just base runs, I would say, just building up time on feet and a bit of endurance and aerobic performance, because it is an aerobic event at the end of the day. As well as smashing out a quick 10k, you need to be able to do it after a swim and a cycle. So your aerobic performance.
I think that's the scary bit for me. Like the three distances of the half, like quite comfortable with individually, but getting on a bike after I've just gassed myself in a swim, that's probably the bit that's a bit like, oh, how will that feel, and how will you go about that?
Leads me on very nicely to the probably most popular triathlon term in terms of training, which is brick training.
Brick training,
so,
yes.
Bike and run. Get used to running off the bike. I remember the first time I did it, and I still get it now. Your legs feel like jelly.
Yeah.
You're all over the shop, and you definitely go slower. And that is definitely a point where you can injure yourself if you just do it on the day. You need to prep for it, train for it as you would anything else. That is an important. That transition is an important transition that will aid you in terms of performance, but it will also aid you in terms of not destroying your limbs and doing weird things with your body as you start to run off the bike.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring us back because Reece is getting really excited about all of this and kind of, I mean, he keeps rubbing his hands together. Then, so that week that we're looking at, we've talked about time on feet. We've talked about looking at coming from a bike to a run, and looking at that transition, and if you can add those two together. What else should be happening during that week?
So, in answer to your question, sorry, I did go straight off topic almost immediately.
Reece is encouraging me, and I'm just going to bring it back.
So
someone has to.
Let's go through a normal week. So number one, you need a rest day.
Yep.
So on Monday you do nothing. And I mean nothing, you don't do anything. Try not to cycle to work if you're a keen triathlete, they usually do that. Rest, you need to rest.
Chill out.
You need to let your body recover. Eat well, drink well that day. Water, not booze. Do everything that you should do that you sort of are aware of. And then let's say Tuesday, I'd do a swim and a bike. So a nice swim session in the morning.
Distances?
Depends what you're training for, but let's say it's an Olympic distance, so let's go for some swim sets of let's go for 1,000 metres, dropped into 200 metre sets. A kilometre is easily done in the pool.
Get the deep in.
If you've done a triathlon before, maybe if you're an experienced triathlete. If not, you need to build up to these things, and swim coaching can help with that. And then let's say Wednesday, a nice easy run.
And that's that steady kind of relatively lowish for exercise heart rate, where you're keeping it there but you're going quite far.
Yeah. Over let's say a 20-week training program, you start at 3 miles, you build up to your 6 to 8 to build up that time on feet for 10k at the end of the race. And then Thursday, you probably do it again, swim and a cycle. Friday, probably an interval run, so an interval session. Cycle would have been like a 40 kilometre again, base cycle. And then usually most people save their long stuff for the weekend, so everyone meets up at the cafe Saturday morning, knockout.
In Lycra. Yeah, in Lycra.
That's a must if you're going to join the club.
Yeah.
Full Lycra, sunnies, espresso before you go.
Yeah.
All the cliches.
Really pointy hat, helmet. Yeah.
Get ready to get shouted at by everyone on the way to Richmond Park. And then, last out, usually at least a race distance, or if you're building up to it, build up slowly. So start at your 20k, 10k, which is doable on a bike. And then you want to be doing race distance a solid sort of 6 to 10 weeks out before your race.
Okay.
And if you want to go fast. And then always Sunday, for me, was the long run day. And you usually, towards the end of your program, start doing a double day where you do a long swim, long run. And then again, brings back into your rest day Monday.
So on the previous podcast and earlier, you said about strength, mobility. Right now, I'm feeling tired just kind of sitting here sipping my coffee.
This is hard. This is a hard.
When does this kind of stuff? So this is an Olympic triathlon kind of sort of style. When does that fit in, or at that point does it not need to?
So I'd probably either take a session out, or you do it on your. You can do it on your sort of Wednesday, we did Wednesday sort of long run, you can do it before or after that. So we're talking, as we said, talking like half an hour for anything sort of sensible for S&C stuff or a conditioning session.
Doesn't have to be like a really heavy weighted.
And mix it up. So some day do legs, some day loads of core work, some day get in a Pilates studio, do a bit of yoga, just mix it up, keep your body guessing. And I think that like there's such a repetitive sport, triathlon, that it's quite easy to get tied down into a certain mindset that keeps your body open to other bits and bobs.
Yeah, I just feel this is me now putting my professional hat back on. It's missing from so many people's programs. Like I deal with a lot of runners, and you say the word strength training to runners, and they
It's not just that, gymnasts. Have you guys seen what those gymnasts do? And strength training did not exist for a lot of them. Even like the circ stuff that I did, most of them didn't do strength training until they got, this is some of the Olympic athletes didn't do strength training. It's they train specifically, they train gymnastics, that's what they do. And then that kind of conditioning at the end, if any gymnasts are listening, it's your V-sits, it's your leg lifts, it's your back extension, it's your hanging leg raises, but it's not actually leg strength in gym, whereas now more people are slowly starting to put that in, but it can be quite behind.
As we touched a little bit on in the previous chat with Dan in the cycling one, but the big thing for me about strength training, it will have a knock-on effect of improving your performance, but it's going to keep you in the game. It's the way I look at S&C for endurance athletes, it's mostly about tissue robustness and making your body strong and robust so it can deal with the loads that you're about to put through it. Dan's just described to us a pretty stock standard triathlon week for longer distance triathletes. He's just, without trying, he's named eight training sessions.
And remember, he's done that whilst working a full-time shift, a full-time job.
That's why they're like this.
So
Dan's only 28.
So you've got to. You might do a really long run or something in the morning, and then have to come and be a physio all day, and you're on your feet, and you're doing all the rest of the stuff, and then you decide to go for a swim in the evening, or you're gonna. So that kind of little, and often that 30-minute session, and kind of picking that stuff up. Remember, you've still got to do whatever you do during the day.
And I think Reece picked up on probably if you're training, that's like a 6 to 8 week training block for triathlons, but year round, your off seasons is probably where you do your leg press, your deadlifts, the bits and bobs that will make you durable. And not fall to bits when you do put your body through that sort of training schedule.
And that's not
so you don't run, swim and cycle all day, every day, for the whole year. Which is what Dan's saying. That's what I do.
You'll see me on the leg press in there sometimes.
And that's not exclusive to triathlon. Like that's a good thing about for any sport. Well, then there's an in-season and an out-season. So my big sport that I love is Australian rules football, and the stats around strength testing, start of the season saying exactly the same in rugby. The drop off is huge. So it's that pre-season preparatory period where you need to be getting in those really good quality strength training sessions, and then in season you drop it back a couple of times a week.
But it's maintenance.
It's maintenance.
You're not
trying to keep
when you're playing that much, when you're doing that much kind of contacts and stuff. The whole point of it is maintenance, and it's keeping you at that really powerful level you were at when you didn't have to run into people, and that's kind of the key to it.
We've all worked in elite sporting environments, and I think that one thing that we both agree with is there is no catching up. If you don't do your S&C in your off season or in your pre-season, you can't just add it into a training load, because that's when you will fall to bits. So there is no catch up. If you miss it, you miss it. You should probably just start again and reevaluate your year. But
choices.
The guys that do it professionally and the elite guys, which is where we should all take our basic advice from. I appreciate time constraints being time constraints, but if you do miss that block of training, you can't bodge it, unfortunately. You usually get found out at some point.
And we touched it a little bit in the last one again around cycling, and I know sort of Dan agrees with this. They don't need to be complex strength sessions. Again, we're not training to be powerlifters or Olympic weightlifters. That's not our sport. Our sport is triathlon or football or rugby or whatever it is. So whatever you're doing in regards to your strength training, get in and out quick. You really shouldn't be in the gym for any more than about half an hour, 40 minutes. Get in a couple of mobility exercises, 4 or 5 strength exercises on the key muscle groups, and get out of there.
Yeah, and also if you've done your long ride, then get off the bike and do a couple of mobility exercises.
Yeah.
Really short, really simple, before you sit down and watch TV.
I'll sit at the desk for the
Little
next
and
8
often I'll
hours.
sit at the desk, yeah.
For the next 8 hours, yeah.
The last thing I would point out for triathletes specifically, if you haven't heard of an app called Training Peaks, download it and use it. The professional cyclists that I work with, the one thing that they get picked up at, and I work with professional cycling from what is quite an elite level to sort of entry semi-professional level. The first thing the semi-professional guys I've started work with get is that. And
Why?
Training load. You can easily overtrain on a bike, or running or triathlon in general. You document what you're doing, and you'll be shocked at how much people will do before realising they're overtraining. So I think that's a big one. A tip for triathletes: if you're training, like Reece is training for a half iron or a full iron, monitor your load.
So that app, what do you call it?
So it's called Training Peaks.
Training Peaks. It's
Training
quite a good
Peaks.
injury prevention tool too.
Massively.
Yeah, and it's super user friendly. I'm using it at the moment.
Okay.
My coach uploads my workouts on there, and then I log on, can see them. I can give him feedback. It syncs up to my Garmin and every other bloody fitness app that I've currently got running. I finish a run and I have 6 notifications from all these different apps that it's uploaded and synced and all sorts of things. But the beautiful thing is, especially from his end, he's able to look, he graphs my weeks.
And you can change it as needed.
Yeah, and as is really common with a lot of periodization, is that we'll build up for 3 weeks, but we'll give you a drop-off week to let your body recover, dissipate that fatigue, and then we go again. Up for 3 weeks, down for 1, up for 3 weeks, which is a super common in S&C world. That's a super common pattern.
So then looking at kind of periodization, so training load and then using something like that app, what other injury prevention things can people do if they are training for a triathlon?
Well, the bits we discussed previously, which is
Or your bike fit stuff.
Oh yeah.
Plug for podcast number 1 with Dan, or podcast 11.
But I think, as you mentioned, the conditioning thing and sort of picking up a ethos there, whether it's Pilates, yoga, S&C stuff in the gym, whatever it is that you do, but also nutrition is the other thing that makes a big difference to people being able to perform and being able to achieve those things. If you don't have the right building blocks to prepare yourself, to fuel yourself around what you're asking your body to do, you fall apart quicker than anything else. So yeah, nutrition and making sure that you eat well.
Yeah.
Easy on the booze.
Respect rest.
Yeah.
Respect sleep. The number 1 recovery tool we have is sleep, and unfortunately the contradiction of triathlon is, like we've kind of touched on, if you're working a full-time job, that's 40-45 hours plus trying to train for
Plus commuting time.
9, 10, yeah, exactly, and then trying to train for 9, 10, 11 hours a week. But you still have to fit in sleep around that. Super important.
Partners, kids.
Yeah, all of that stuff.
Socialising.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, want to keep some of your friends. But there's a fantastic book which really opened my eyes by Dr. Matthew Walker, which is called Why We Sleep.
Oh yeah.
Amazing book, and it really opened my eyes to the importance of sleep. And for anyone that wants to be convinced that sleep is important, just read a chapter of that book. It'll change your perspective on it really quickly. But some of the texts I've read and things like that, if you're struggling to get your 8 hours in, which is generally what's recommended for most people, supplementing it with naps and things in the middle of the day.
Oh, I love a good nap.
Yeah, so here is your physio prescribing naps. You can tell your boss, you can tell your partner, my physio said I need a nap. But it's shown to have really, really good effects on reducing injury rates and even increased performance. So there's been a couple of really comprehensive studies through colleges in the US of the injury prevention and performance gains that you get through sleep. So super important.
So what about things like massage?
Again, really helpful in terms of recovery. In terms of the guys that offer it here, I know they see a lot of the triathletes or the cyclists that I see. Okay. So it's quite often usually it's a question I get asked, to be honest, rather than a referral I make. It's someone coming up and saying, look, goodness, we've got a couple of guys here who completely do a great job. Usually most of them working within sport already, so they know what's needed. Again, it's those finer points, those little bells and whistles that you can add to a training program that give you an extra couple % make you feel that bit better, allow you to train a bit harder the next day. All your top end guys, certainly cyclists, finish the Tour de France, they get it done every single night, and they live for it. They absolutely love it at the end of the day, and they feel much better for it. In terms of sort of massage on a regular basis for someone amateur like myself, it's a treat, or I treat it as a treat. So post-race is obviously very nice, but obviously the week of a race or race week, you drop your training down, get lots of water in you, get lots of sleep, chuck a massage in there. All the little bells and whistles that can just make that week a bit nicer. Sort of treat yourself once you've done the training.
Lovely. I should try that.
Race week
I work hard.
Just not the 12 weeks of training beforehand, just living for that taper.
Every week's a race week we had.
Yeah, race week.
And what about other recovery kind of tips? What else can people do? Because obviously massage can be a little bit more expensive for some people. So is there any other things that you can do on your own?
Yeah, so active recovery is probably one of the nicest things. So sometimes taking a walk is quite nice.
Yeah.
Give the headspace as well. I use those. So I can't remember the most popular one now. Is it called Headspace?
Yeah, Headspace or Calm. Those are probably two of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
But you can get free apps or free podcasts and things on Spotify. If you just Google meditation, find a voice that you like. There's lots of kind of ones on there which are quite nice.
Meditation's it's one that's sometimes not mentioned, but it can really, the thing to keep in mind about your body is your body doesn't know what type of stress it is. It doesn't know whether it's physical stress or emotional stress. It's just stress. So quite often the analogy is used of the stress bucket. So anytime you do something to stress yourself, you're pouring a little bit into the stress bucket. So whether that's a nine training sessions a week, you're 45 hours at work, you're fighting with your girlfriend, boyfriend, your boss is giving you trouble, that's all pouring into the bucket. So anything you can do to empty that bucket a little bit is really, really important. So along with the active stuff, your meditation, mindfulness, those types of things are a really good way of
Does a cup of tea and a packet of chocolate buttons fit in there?
For some people, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I mean, look, for some people...
Maybe not a triathlete.
For some people, Love Island does it, but for me, it just absolutely fills that bucket up as high as it can possibly go. So you might find your thing, but it is those little things can make a really, really big difference, I think, at the back end.
Any other tips from that recovery point of view?
For
Other than Love Island? Or not?
I don't know why Love Island popped in there, of all things.
He clearly watches it.
You got me.
But yeah, again, I could sort of you can go through all the sort of little marginal gains that you can make in terms of looking after nutrition, which is protein shakes and other nutritional aspects that you should be aware of if not using the water, probably the main one really. Foam rolling is always a nice one that people tend to do. Again, some people are fans of it, some people are not. The evidence is probably out on that one still.
On lots of things, I think.
Yeah.
The massage guns are starting to get a lot of press. Yeah, which I don't know. Theraguns. Yeah. I don't know where I'm at with them yet. Because as physios, obviously we like to be evidence-based practitioners. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of evidence out there for them yet. Not to say that won't be coming out. Some people swear by them. Mm-hmm. Other people don't really think much of them. But again, it's probably about finding things that work. For you as an individual, isn't it?
Yeah, and so my best friend, shout out to Cass, is a soft tissue therapist, and she will be, she's worked in elite sports for the last, I don't know how long. I'll probably upset her if I give the wrong time. She feels old. But it's not just about getting a sports massage where you get battered and feel really bruised and everything else. Actually, going and getting something where you they take it a little bit slower, can sink in a little bit deeper because you're not kind of contracting the tissue around someone poking you in the leg. Yeah. Then just because it's not hard and fast doesn't mean that it's not going to be really working. So good soft tissue therapists and how they use their hands, it doesn't just have to be really pokey and elbows in and that sort of stuff. So there's a bit of a difference with there as well in terms of where soft tissue research is going and what it can do.
Yeah, I think recovery might be a podcast
in
itself somehow. We'll put that on the list. We might get Dan back for that one in the future and we can have a chat about that.
Or Cass.
Or both of them.
Both of them.
We can have a little tea party.
More the merrier, as long as there's not more than 6, right? Alright. So I think that's a pretty good sort of rundown, Dan, of triathlon, and both sides of me got a little bit out of that, I think. So I guess just a bit of an overview. Triathlon's hard. It's hard on the body, but there's lots of things that you can be doing.
Yep.
to prevent that, reduce the chances. From my point of view, S&C does hold a massive part of the puzzle.
And for me, Pilates has a part of the puzzle because of all that mobility.
Yep, exactly right. No, I agree. Dan, is there anything that you'd really hang your hat on?
For me, doing the long distance stuff, it's basically an eating competition. Once you've done all the hard work, if you don't eat on the day, you will run out of energy. So if you're doing a half iron, 1 gram per kilogram body weight per hour.
Wow.
It doesn't matter if it's jelly babies, sports gels, whatever it is.
Oh my gosh,
You need to
into
eat.
triathlons.
You need to eat while you race. My specialty is Haribo.
Yeah.
Fizzy ones?
If tank plastics towards the end of the race when I'm feeling a bit down.
Yeah.
Extra
Is that why when the photos come through and you're sort of scrunching your face up? Then that's why.
Unfortunately, that's just my face.
It's not the pain, it's the sour lolly.
But yeah, so you need to eat throughout the course of those long distance races, and I think in triathlon, particularly half iron, particularly iron, and anything more than that, even if it's ultra marathon, if you don't eat, you won't get through it. So you need to manage that strategy part of your race as well.
Yeah.
Probably a different podcast entirely, but
As was it you that said to me, that's the 4th discipline in
Eating.
triathlon.
Yes,
Is your nutrition
Right.
and refueling. That's the 4th. That's the 4th part.
So I know we were wrapping up, but just one more question. Does that mean, would you recommend someone see a nutritionist then? Or
I mean,
someone like yourself who's really kind of knows what they're talking about in terms of triathlons?
through one medium or another, like if obviously the gold standard for an elite athlete, you're going to see a nutritionist and they're going to plan your race day for you, they'll chat to you about your wants, needs.
But not just race day, but the training
Oh
period
yeah,
up to.
everything to do with that. It's so important. So yeah, it's whether it comes to race day or the training plan nutrition, you should be. If you're not already thinking about it, you should be thinking about it and basically planning it. You should really plan your meals. And I know when I've raced really hard, when I was doing the city long distance Ironman ones, I think you get through something. It's 5,500-6,000 calories a day.
Wow.
That's a lot for a human to eat.
Dan does not look like he eats 5,500 to 6,000 calories.
We're probably getting that way at the moment.
If you didn't do all the exercise.
But you need to eat that much if you're swimming in the morning, going to work, as we said. Like if you're managing stress as well, you need those calories to power yourself through. That's not you start training, you instantly start taking 6,000 calories on board. You build up to it, and that should be a peak. But that's just a number to put out sort of 3 times as much as you would normally eat.
I mean, I personally use my FitnessPal app.
Oh yeah, my mum uses that.
For there's another discussion.
Probably a different
around
reason why, but
for me, it was to make sure. For a lot of people, use it so they're not eating too many calories.
Yeah.
It's been super eye-opening for me how hard it is to get the calories in that I actually need. Like I've got the opposite issue.
Well, especially if you're seeing patients regularly. So typically in physio, you go different client every 30 minutes for 8-10 hours with not that much breaks in between.
Yeah.
I remember cycling home when I was training hard. Which was probably the last time I trained really hard was a couple of years ago for the Keltman Northland ones. But I'd cycle home, and it's only a 10k cycle, but I bonk on the way home because I hadn't eaten during the day.
Yeah.
Bonking means you run out of energy for your body, and you just start to get a bit of tunnel vision. You get a little bit. It's a horrible feeling. You usually have to stop off at sort of Putney, get a chocolate bar just to get home.
Oh wow!
Because if you don't manage it that well, you will run out of energy, which is what happens, and you don't realise it happens until
Until it happens.
By the time you plug in, so where it's set for me is I need to get just for my daily energy. I need to have 2,500 calories. That's just my daily stat. And any
Pre-training, without training.
Without training, any exercise. So like today for me is a 2,000 calorie day with my training. So I've got to find another 2,000 calories on top of that, and with eating good calories,
Yeah.
it's hard. Finding those calories sometimes is really quite difficult, so it's definitely a massive consideration for performance and recovery as well.
Nice.
On that note.
Sorry, I sideswiped that time.
Again, really good discussion, and I think nutritionist we do have on the list to come and speak to us as well, which is always awesome for us to get opinions from different professions and things like that as well. So Dan, that wraps up part number 2.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming.
For anyone that hasn't listened yet, part 1 with Dan, episode 11, we went through all things cycling injuries, and in particular the bike fit service that we offer here at Complete, which is headed up by Dan, which is a fantastic service. In future weeks, we've got some exciting guests coming up.
Yes, we do! I'm so excited about one of them!
We do indeed. So keep an eye out, everyone, for when episode 13 comes out next week.
we'll keep you in the loop as to who's coming on with us. Thank you, Dan.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
That concludes episode 12 of the Complete Health Podcast. For any more information or questions, please feel free to email into us at either reece@complete-physio.co.uk or helen@complete-pilates.co.uk. We're also on Instagram as @CompleteHealthPodcast, all one word.
And if you haven't already, please go back and have a look at our previous episode with Dan, where we looked at bike fits and how they can make you go faster, as well as help you avoid injury whilst you're on the bike. Keep an eye out in coming weeks for our next guest, Donovan Pyle, where we talk about psychology, in particular the psychology of musculoskeletal injuries.
For another week, stay healthy and goodbye.